I want to welcome each of you to our Advancing Research and Scholarship Day here at BC. This is the fourth such event, and this year's theme is Research in the Common Good. Now, before I get too far into my opening remarks, I want to thank a few individuals and groups within BC that made today possible, notably my friends and colleagues in the Center for Centers, ITS, and Media Technology Services. For without their help during today's event and the previous events, this would not be possible. Now, many of you know who've attended these events in the past know that the purpose and part of advancing research and scholarship is to bring together faculty and students that have a shared research or scholarship interest, but are spread across the university and oftentimes across different campuses. They may be on the Newton campus, they may be on the Brighton campus, as well as the main campus here in Chestnut Hill. But they would otherwise not get together. And the idea is to bring individuals together to stimulate a discussion and hopefully facilitate some collaborations that might eventually lead to research and scholarship around a given theme. And this year's theme, as I said, is advancing of the day is research in the common good. Now, this theme had its origins actually in the University Strategic Planning Initiative, which is ever to excel advancing Boston College's mission. The initiative was launched in January of 2016, and as many of you know, was co-chaired by David Quigley, the Provost and Dean of Faculties, as well as Mike Lockhead, the Executive Vice President of the university. And they assembled a variety of executive teams and steering committees to work on the University Strategic Planning Initiative. Many things came from that initiative. One in particular, one of the key drivers that is actually germane to today's event is the directive to expand and support scholarship and research in keeping with Boston College's mission to help address complex societal problems and contribute to the common good, with particular focus on the sciences. Here at Boston College, we will strengthen support for research and scholarship that address urgent societal needs and complex global problems, advance the humanities, and explore the intersections of faith and culture across the disciplines. We will do this in part through, as you may know, the establishment of the Schiller Institute for Integrated Science and Society. And among the many academic programs that are being proposed for the Institute, one of the key elements of the Institute will serve as a model for interdisciplinary collaboration and creativity across the campus for faculty and students across the schools and a variety of departments. And interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinary collaboration will be the key, and I think it is the key to solving complex societal problems. Kristen Eyre, professor of the theology department at Boston College, in a recent article titled Idea of the Common Good, noted that Catholic universities would do well to galvanize collaboration across disciplines to refine traditional understandings and applications of the concept of the common good. With the University Strategic Initiative as well as the Schiller Institute, I believe Boston College is well positioned to be a national leader as well as a leader among Catholic universities in this regard. And I can think of no better way than today in this room at BC to initiate collaborations around the common good by bringing together faculty and students from across the schools and departments at BC whose research and scholarship advances the common good. Now, today we're going to hear from 7 distinguished faculty as well as a couple of students. We're going to break the day up into faculty presentations in the first part and then in the afternoon, followed by the student presentations. In between that will be a panel discussion moderated by Greg Kauscher, Dean of the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, and Thomas Tegman, Dean of the School of Theology and Ministry. And the topic of the panel discussion will be around the common good in Jesuit Catholic place of research. We also take today in this opportunity to recognize key alumni of Boston College. And in this instance, an individual whose body of research has addressed and contributed to the common good across not just our country, but across the globe. And this year, it is an honor to welcome to campus Ambassador Ken Hackett, class of '68. Ken is actually, turns out, lives in Amelia Island, which is about 20 minutes from where I was born and grew up in northern Florida. So now I have even more reason to visit my family and certainly visit Amelia Island. Now, time does not prevent for me to outline and convey to you all of the accomplishments and contributions of Ken, but I just want to highlight a few things. He served as the U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See from 2013 until 2017, and many of you know in this room he was CEO and President of Catholic Relief Services from 1993 to 2012. During that time, he led the CRS's response to numerous worldwide emergencies, including the Ethiopian famine, the crisis in Somalia, relief efforts, and issues around the Rwandan genocide, Bosnia, and Kosovo emergencies. We learned a few weeks ago from Paul Farmer about the devastating impact of the earthquakes in Haiti, and during Ken's leadership at CRS, he was involved in the emergency relief to that. He has served as the board of directors of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. This is a U.S. foreign agency dedicated to fighting global poverty. He was also a member of the Global Poverty Task Force led by the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships from '96 to '04. He has also served on the boards of the African Society and Jesuit Refugee Services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the title of his talk today is Service to the Church and Country, 50 Years Across the Globe. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's a pleasure to be back in Boston, where people talk properly. I live among those, those in Florida are Georgians, Alabamans, and they do talk different than we do up here. But let me start that when Provost Quigley called me and asked that I give this address, my first reaction was, what? Working for the common good? This is Dave Hollenbach, Brian Hare, Jose Casanova stuff, not some practitioner like me. But he said, no, that's just what we want, a practitioner. My entire career since leaving BC has been in the international arena. And that's pretty strange for somebody from West Roxbury. I mean, a big trip for us growing up was to go down to Green Harbor. You know, my mother, I don't think, ever left Boston. It just was inconceivable for her. So in my senior year here, 1968, I had taken the requisite job interviews, and it was maybe around March, and a lacrosse buddy of mine and I were walking across campus from Fulton over to McElroy to get some lunch. And when we got to McElroy, he said to me, "Oh, there's the Peace Corps. Let's go sign up for the Peace Corps." And I said, "Why not? It beats the interviews with GE and Exxon. And sounded good to me." So I signed up. And a month or so later, it was the night of the big fraternity dance. I arrived home and my mother said, "You got a letter from the Peace Corps." I opened it and it said, "Welcome to the Peace Corps. You are assigned to Ghana." So I said to my mother, "Ma, where's Ghana?" And she said, "Oh, I think it's in the Caribbean." And that was the beginning of my international career. And the night of the dance, of course, I said to Carmen, Carmen, are you going on the Peace Corps? Did you get a letter from the Peace Corps? He said, yeah, I got a letter from the Peace Corps, but I'm going to GE instead. So he went to Fairfield, Connecticut. I went to Accra, Ghana, and that started it all. My motivation was really, I guess, as I assessed it, true, but quite naive. I wanted to help people and make a difference in people's lives, and I never recall doing a lot of volunteering or anything when I was here. I started the lacrosse club. That was a full commitment, other than trying to find a date for the weekend, but that was the extent of my engagement while I was here. But I have these recollections of my parents talking about St. Francis Xavier. My father was Francis Xavier Hackett, so we got all those stories. And I remember my uncle, who was a Passionist priest, who on occasion would bring in some of his colleagues, Passionists, and one of them that particularly impressed an 8-year-old kid was Father Jerome Doze, who was in Mindanao, Philippines, for about 30 years. That was pretty far out there. And so his stories were enthralling. So my assignment in the Peace Corps was, in our group of about 25 people, definitely the most isolated. Where I was located was 27 hours from the capital city. I lived with a Czechoslovakian SVD priest at the Catholic Mission, and I was assigned to try to convince the people in the neighborhood that the agricultural cooperative movement had viability. I had been a business major here, and we were all business majors. And we were going to restore the credibility of the Ghanaian agricultural cooperative movement that Kwame Nkrumah and his colleagues had totally stolen all the money from. Or as they say in Ghana, he chopped it. Well, I learned pretty soon that the people I was dealing with, while they weren't formally well-educated, they were smart, sometimes even brilliant. And how they analyze problems without their PhD, their MA, their BA, was, to me, a great insight. So that was kind of where I had my beginning. So fast forward after 3.5 years working with the Peace Corps in Ghana to joining Catholic Relief Services. And throughout assignments in Africa, I was based in the headquarters in the Africa Regional Office, so I traveled throughout the continent like 60% of my time. I spent time in the headquarters working in church relations, that is, working with the diocese here in the United States. And then I took over their fundraising apparatus and went back to live overseas in the Philippines, and then was moved to Kenya. And Kenya was from where I was offered the job of CEO of Catholic Relief Services in 1993. So that's the summary of my credentials, and I suppose that's why David asked me to give this speech this afternoon. I have no intention to move into defining concepts and meanings of the common good. Popes and philosophers and theologians and political scientists and decrees from the recent Jesuit congregation have all explained and defined the common good, what is meant by it. Rather, I'd like to merely use a layperson's definition and move from there. So what I'd like to do this afternoon is to use my personal experience to offer some thoughts as to what areas you might consider as you think about research and scientific undertakings for the common good. And then identify some cautions or difficulties you may face as you attempt to collaborate or partner with international groups and agencies and organizations. I realized in putting these remarks together that much has changed in academia since I walked around this campus. I don't get it any longer. So I started reading some things. I came across this work by Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist who talks about the tensions between social justice and truth on campuses. And I'm saying, what? Then I'm reading about microaggressiveness on campus. What? Come on. But while I admit that I'm out of touch with what's happening on university campuses, I think that BC's strategic emphasis on promoting the common good is appropriate, opportune, and really timely. Therefore, before moving into approaches and considerations for how BC might pursue research and scholarship for the common good, particularly at the international level, I believe it's first wise to do something that you're all, or many of you, are quite aware of, and that is the great capacity that there is both here in the United States, in Boston, at Boston College, and then around the world of the Jesuit networks. Those networks are robust. Look at the stuff that is going on domestically. I mean, okay, it won't be the common good, but think of the network of Jesuit high schools. You know, some of them are pretty fancy, like the one I went to, Boston College High School, and the one I sent my son to, Loyola Blakefield in Baltimore. But equally, there is the whole Cristo Rey movement, a wonderful inner city movement that has really been so successful. The engagement of BC faculty and students and alumni here in Boston and across the country is another substantial asset and a particularly useful set of experiences. Just in the last 4 years, I was so impressed with the BC alumni that I encountered who deal in the public service arena. Secretary John Kerry, an alumnus of the law school. He would have made a great president. Great guy. Secretary Ernest Munoz, a brilliant scientist and Secretary of Energy. Senator Ed Markey. I think Peter Martin, my colleague, will attest. I think we had Senator Markey twice or 3 times coming. And I remember one time at the dinner table, he was rehearsing his Teilhard de Chardin arguments, which he was going to use the next day when he went to the Vatican. I mean, he was so passionate about climate issues, about human rights issues. He was my classmate here in '68. Ambassador Nick Burns, the guy you see on MSNBC and CNN all the time over at Harvard Kennedy School, is also a classmate here, a terrific diplomat. Internationally, the Jesuit assets package are even broader. Think of the network of Jesuit colleges and universities and institutes across the globe. I think I read the number is over 200. I know you've thought about better ways of networking Jesuit universities. Somebody was telling me that there was a meeting here on networking Jesuit universities about 4 years ago, and there may be another one next year. This is terrific. Wonderful things could come out of that kind of connection. If I read the strategic directions correctly, strategic direction 3 in the strategic plan calls the university to expand scholarship and research in keeping with BC's mission to help address complex societal problems and contribute to the common good, with particular emphasis on sciences. And then direction 4, to engage that challenge locally and around the globe. So, this new Schiller Institute for Integrated Science and Study and its efforts to bring transdisciplinary collaborative approaches to addressing those complex problems, that's fantastic in my mind and very far-sighted. Coincidentally, I picked up remarks of Pope Francis at a conference in mid-November. It was a conference for the Pontifical Council of Culture, and You say Pontifical Council for Culture. Okay, so the Pope said, in light of the rapid advancements in neurosciences, genetics, medicine, and artificial intelligence, a more holistic approach is needed to overcome the tragic divisions between two cultures, the humanistic, literary, and theological, and the scientific. To give you an example, that's what they're thinking about in some quarters over there at the Vatican. As a Jesuit Catholic university, an underlying approach as you embark on this new transdisciplinary initiative, as you try to bring the pieces of this great university together, would be integral human development. Not integrated human development, integral human development. It is part of Catholic social thought that talks about respecting the dignity of the individual and dealing with people in a total way. So when you're dealing with a disease, it's not just enough to treat the disease, but you have to take into consideration the implications for the individual's psychological, spiritual, family, and often community, the whole individual. In dealing with the environment, BC's approach should be the person within the environment, not just some technical issue about CO2 counts. Respect the individual and make the individual become an integral part of what you do. Let me offer some thoughts on my experience in university non-governmental agency collaboration. I'll use the example of Catholic Relief Services. And as much as universities and CRS wanted things to fit together and fit together harmoniously, it just doesn't naturally work out that way. You really got to work at it. Let me take an example of the organization Catholic Relief Services preparing for a large grant or contract from the US government, the UN, the World Bank, or other big donors like Gates, etc. Usually the organization, the Catholic Relief Service type organization, wants to collaborate with the university because this is where the money is, so to speak, in the sense of intellect and research capability and scientific capability. First, there has to be an alignment of values. Now, with Catholic Relief Services in BC or any Jesuit university, I don't think at a fundamental level there would be any problem there. It's not at the fundamental level where the alignment has to take place. It's on the edges. And you've got to align those relevant values clearly and explicitly before you embark on a partnership. Second, the expectations of professors who might be involved in bidding a grant or a contract must be totally in sync with the obligations the organization accepts in agreeing to undertake the grant or contract. And I'm going to give you an example of this in a minute. Professors who join with the objective of just wanting to get an article or their research published most times generate friction and dysfunction. That may be a product of the collaboration, but it must directly serve the ends of the collaboration. Third, the terms of partnership or collaboration must be worked out in detail far in advance. You've got to have the arguments before you enter the contract and have them argued fully. And fourth, universally, resources must be available, and you have to go after those resources, and I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know, in a very opportunistic way. You got to be able to move and move together. Let me give you an example. In 2004, the President's Emergency Initiative for AIDS Relief was launched by the Bush administration. CRS, with operations and people in 100 countries around the world and extensively throughout sub-Saharan Africa, was well aware of the human toll that disease was taking on millions of Africans and others. And CRS wanted to do something about it. Dr. Bob Redfield, who I'm sure you know, of the Institute of Human Virology at the University of Maryland, was a neighbor of mine and also a parishioner in the same parish that I went to. We discussed collaboration, and he kept pushing the idea that he had the research capability and Catholic Relief Services had the access, and wouldn't it be great to marry the two together and go after a PEPFAR grant. We had 6 weeks to prepare the grant. We won $365 million, beating out Harvard Medical School, Harvard School of Public Health, who else? Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, and others. We launched. After 6 weeks writing a proposal, but the bottom line, which is the most important thing, is that hundreds of thousands of people received antiretrovirals that would not have gotten them. Hundreds of thousands of people are alive today and families are in touch. On the other hand, the relationship was painful. At times, it almost came apart. And probably we wasted time and we wasted some money because we didn't spend the time in the beginning working through, a priori, the authorities, the relationships, the communication flow before launching into a grant together. CRS had the legal obligation. We had to be able to tell the Institute of Human Virology how it would work. Not what kind of clinical things would happen, but how the relationships would work. And believe me, it was rough. And if BC is going to join their research with implementing groups such as CRS, a detailed plan of relationships, authorities, roles, and communication flows have to be worked out in advance and be crystal clear. Fifth, readiness and timing are everything when you're planning to bid awards from governments, public agencies. If you want to go after a U.S. government agency, be it USAID, DARPA, EPA, HHS, and you want to respond to requests for proposals, your time frame is very limited. It's necessary to move very quickly. You may try unsolicited proposals to some of these donors, but they're generally less available. When you talked about transdisciplinary approach in the new center, it clicked with me. That's the way to do it. Have things ready, have all the parts integrated before you move. So what might be some interesting areas to explore? Let me start from where I just came from, the Vatican, the Holy See. And it might not naturally come to you that you should even bother to think about what might be going on inside that little tiny area called Vatican City, which is probably smaller than this campus. Well, I'll begin with the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. When the Holy See persecuted Galileo, how many years ago? It was in the precursor of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences that the trial took place. It's a forum for over, I think it has now 45 Nobel laureates and a lot of other distinguished scientists. Stephen Hawking is a member. You don't hear too much about the Pontifical Academy of Sciences or its sister agency, the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, but they do some interesting stuff. Let me give you part of the program of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in 2017. Here's some of the topics. Food values, the renaissance of Mediterranean diet and its significance for the 21st century world. Okay. The human right to water, biological extinction, sharing models and best practice to end modern slavery and to restore dignity to its victims, connectivity as a human right, cell biology and genetics, the health of people and our planet, our responsibility. I mean, you can see the range that the Pontifical Academy of Sciences takes. And then its sister organization, let me share some of their agendas for 2017. Changing relationships among markets and state and civil society towards a participatory society, new roads to social and cultural integration, biological extinction, inclusive solidarity and the integration of marginal people, the Judges Summit on Human Trafficking and Organized Crime, which I attended, fascinating effort. And why I raise possible engagement with the Pontifical Academies of Science and Social Science is that from personal experience, I know that the Chancellor, Bishop Marcelo Sanchez Sorando, is open to collaboration and collaboration with other individuals and institutions in convening large international gatherings around important topics that serve humankind. And while his resident resources are limited, his convening power is enormous. Because when the newspaper talked about Bernie Sanders being invited to the Vatican, where did Bernie show up? At the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. We knew that, but the Globe didn't. Another new Vatican office that you might explore collaboration with is the dicastery, which is basically Office for Integral Human Development, headed by Cardinal Peter Turkson. This office had a pretty broad scope in terms of issues it covers. Laudato Si, the encyclical on the climate, emanated from the precursor to this office. And they handle the Holy See's agenda on justice and peace, particularly as it relates to migrants and refugees and health and charitable works and the care for creation. So they got a pretty big agenda. And earlier this year, they added to that agenda arms control, disarmament, and capital punishment. A lot of opportunity there. Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, some of you may know him. He's an American archbishop who had headed up until a year and a half ago the Vatican's UN office in Geneva. He was brought back by the Pope to Rome to basically organize this dicastery on integral human development. And I remember going to see him one day, and he's got papers spread all over his desk, and he says, "Oh, I'm working on this speech." And I said to him, "Silvano, why are you working on the speech? Come on, you're supposed to be running things. Get someone to draft the speech for you." And he said, "Oh, I wish I had access to kind of a think tank of individuals to cover and prepare papers and do research on some of the topics our dicastery handles." And I thought, whoa, there's opportunities for Jesuit universities and others around the world. All of the Vatican offices are staffed by good, smart, and dedicated people. All of them are understaffed. A third office at the Vatican undertaking programs which appear relevant to your strategic direction could be, as I mentioned earlier, that Pontifical Council for Culture. Just an example of where some of their emphasis lies is found in the agenda of their November plenary meeting. Let me give you an example. They had sessions on the ground map, anthropological models today, sessions on redesigning human nature, medicine and genetics, the human person, the brain and the soul, neurosciences. And last, in the Society of Intelligent Machines, artificial intelligence. These are Vatican offices dealing with artificial intelligence. So you see, there's a lot there, and I believe there may be opportunities for collaboration around your strategic agenda of promoting the common good with a particular focus on sciences and research. Let me end with some suggestions for collaboration with groups such as Catholic Relief Services and many other, Paul Farmer's group, Oxfam, many. Probably one of the easiest places to start in a partnership is in the area of monitoring and evaluation. And I know some of you are going to be speaking about that today, and some of you have expertise there. Donors want to see results, or lack thereof, and they want rational results. They don't want just, I think. We feel. No. Show me the data. Show me the data. And I think that's what a university could bring to an implementing organization. Another example of the type of program that CRS could have sought collaboration on was back in 2015 and 16 when Catholic Relief Services decided to participate in a project submission for the MacArthur Foundation. The MacArthur Foundation launched a program called 100 and Change, and it will be an award. It involves $100 million to one project that promises real and lasting change in one of society's more intractable problems. In the CRS's case, that was the whole question of orphans and what some of the newer thinking is about how we handle the situation for orphans. CRS is now one of 4 finalists and has got a good chance of winning. But that would have been a perfect place for maybe School of Social Work or some other part of the university to collaborate with CRS. CRS just happens to spend most of its focus in rural areas where economic poverty is often very, very pervasive. And such communities, most of which are agrarian, are being impacted by climate change in really visible ways. Often, their staple crops are being ravaged by diseases and pests caused by changes in temperature. I mean, one of my former colleagues, David Leahy, was telling me about problems of fall armyworms. I bet nobody in this university is studying the pest fall armyworms, but it impacts on the staple crops of people. Or banana wilt. All throughout Central Africa, people rely on bananas, not just to make their liquor, but as a staple crop. And cassava mosaic. Cassava is such an important crop in Africa and many other places around the world. The cassava mosaic, because of increased temperatures, is ruining the crops, devastating them. And that means people will go hungry. Where your scientists engage in anything related to that kind of research or other types, CRS and its partners are there on the ground, ready to work with communities in a response and programs. What organizations such as Catholic Relief Services and many others bring is local knowledge, ability to navigate personalities, organizations, and territories that are not immediately familiar to a new researcher. Additionally, Catholic Relief Services, for one organization, generally works not on its own, but works with local partners. And 95% of the time, those local partners are local church partners at all levels, at the national, at the local, at the parish level. So you can find easy common cause. Rare tropical human diseases, disaster mitigation and response, impact investing, microcredit, refugee assistance are all areas that Catholic Relief Services and many other organizations engage internationally and could be, I would suggest, fertile areas for collaboration with this university. As an alum, I am really pleased to see where BC is engaging on this new and important initiative, or initiatives, I should say. This is where BC should be. Some years ago, Dean Godenza took me to see Dave, your predecessor. I forget what his name was. And Dean Godenza wanted to expand the university's international engagement. And I was about to retire from CRS, and he said, well, you tell the provost what BC could do. And so I gave him my spiel, and he said to me, Ken, it's not going to fly here. This is Boston. They don't look beyond Boston. Well, now your vision is broad. Congratulations, good luck, and excel. Thank you very much.
We have time for questions.
I'm good. You know, this is like church. Nobody sits in the front. Nobody asks the first question.
Hi, my name is Les Grant. I'm currently a graduate student at Woods College Advanced Studies, and I'm applied economics graduate student. I'm also a BC alum, so I'm back 26 years later. And what I found interesting in your perspective is, as you talked about when you were at BC, the differences, and I can relate totally, being back here and seeing the growth of Boston College, seeing the transition and the transformation. Because when I was here at BC, I was dealing with the idea of being gay and how it was really deliberate. You know, I was really so challenged inside to deal with that while being a freshman and moving through my life. But now as a 52-year-old gay man who is HIV positive with an AIDS diagnosis, who's lived through PCP pneumonia and Kaposi sarcoma, being back at BC has given me, I can't even, it's a gift. It's a gift. And what I heard in your story, in your voice, in your inspiration is that this is the right place for me. I love how you said the idea about integration versus integral. I'm going to be thinking about that because I feel like that relates to where I am in my life. And I like thinking about that perspective, the whole. And I appreciate the common good because, you know, my life in the last 10 years has changed so much. And to be part of this conversation, the common good, you know, about HIV research, it just thrills me that we're having this conversation, all of us together. And I say I'm HIV positive with AIDS because I think it's important to put a face to the illness. And just like you said, it's the whole. You know, I am Les Grant, but I also happen to be gay. I also happen to be HIV positive with AIDS. But let me tell you, I'm creating a business right now. I'm creating a business, so BC is helping me transform from the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. I'm fulfilling a passion by creating a business. And being back at BC and being able to be with everybody on the same page with the technology that we have, the idea of collaboration, you know, we're all in this together. That's fantastic. And I loved your thank you very much for your address because I feel more connected to you because I'm from West Roxbury.
Get out of here.
Holy name. Not St. Teresa's. Boy Member of the Year, Parkway Boys Club, 1981, but that's Boston Public School. But here I am, and here you are. And I feel fascinated that I can be here and share your experiences. Wonderful, the Vatican. I can't even imagine. You know what your speech has said to me? It said, I can do whatever I want to do as long as I want to do it. I have no limit. I have no limitations. It's only what's in my mind, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to create and be part of the conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Les. That was very moving.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jimena Soto. I work at the School of Social Work. And I very much appreciate the perspective. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more. You spoke how you've seen BC change, but I also wonder how you have seen global work change. I have been witness just in the last 4 years that there's a different approach from being much more prescriptive to much more one of listening and saying what is already present, and really, what would be your advice moving forward for us to become better partners in how we're listening to the communities that we want to serve and make a difference, whether they're local, global? How do we as a community develop those skills a little bit more better?
I just had to write kind of an obituary of one of my bosses, Monsignor Wilson Kaiser, who was the Africa Regional Director starting in 1953 until 1978. And so in researching him, it was kind of interesting. He was a priest in Montana. And one of his roles, in addition to be boxing coach and parish priest and CYO, was to raise money for War Relief Services, which was the predecessor of Catholic Relief Services. And when they were looking for somebody to run the office in Berlin after the Second World War, he claims they went through a list. They saw Kaiser, Wilson E. Kaiser. Oh, he must speak German. He must be German. Hey, Monsignor Kaiser didn't speak a word of German, but they sent him to Berlin, and that's that. Those days were the triumphal days. We, the Americans, were there with our Marshall Plan and our goodies and giveaway, and we'll decide what you, the people in Germany or France or Uganda, need. So that past is gone. There are still some agencies that do that. And you see them played out with their commercials on TV and things like that. But generally, the concepts that exist today are, as you said, you have to engage and listen to the people you're working with. Engage deeply, respectfully, and actively. Second, doing good is not good enough. You have to move beyond that. To be professional, effective, test your effectiveness, prove your effectiveness. And third, I would say, it's no longer the American private, voluntary, and non-governmental, or the European agencies. In the case of Catholic Relief Services, it's the Caritas network, which is an indigenous network. And that's where the substance is. Somebody was telling me they just got back from discussions with the Indian Catholic Medical something of India. It's an enormous network. It rivals Catholic Health Association here. It's Indian. It's not European, it's not American. So that to me is how I see the new norms, the new changes that have to be brought about.
Good afternoon. I'm Philip Landrigan. I'm the third one here from West Roxbury. I know what you mean about staying local. I took my first trip west of the Mississippi when I was almost 30, and I was working for CDC, and they sent me out to Arizona to investigate rabies, and that was the first time I ever crossed the Mississippi. Never saw any reason really to cross the Hudson, let alone the Mississippi. But I wanted to ask a question about the scope of work in which Catholic Relief Services engages around the world. You mentioned the various collaborations. One I didn't hear you mention was with engineers, schools of engineering. But I know from my own time in Africa that, as a physician, that a lot of the medical work we did had about as much lasting impact as walking on the beach at Green Harbor at low tide. And more than once I thought if we could have only had a team of engineers to dig wells, to create new generation toilets, to build solar cell systems more recently, that we could potentially do much more lasting good. And I wondered if collaborations with engineers fits into the menu someplace.
Well, I'll give you an example of the Haiti earthquake. Catholic Relief Services raised $160 million privately, and then added another 40 or so million from government grants and things like that. Aware that Haiti, to be frank, is a pretty corrupt place. And we had to spend that $200 million responsibly. We proposed that the reconstruction of buildings, particularly church buildings, schools, churches, social centers, etc., be done according to standards and with a heavy amount of transparency and accountability. We proposed that to the Haitian Bishops' Conference. Their reaction was, like you have done for the last 50 years, just give us the money and don't ask for any accountability. Well, that wasn't good enough because there were hundreds of thousands of people who gave us money and we had to be accountable to them. So what I did is I brought it to the bishops who were in charge of handling collections and things like that. And I made this proposal, that we would set up an organization in Haiti to oversee the construction of the hospitals, the schools, the churches, so that they be done at standard in accountable ways and in a transparent way. And that the bishops in Haiti didn't like the idea. One of the bishops was Kevin Farrell. He is now heading the Office of Laity in the Vatican. He was the auxiliary bishop in Washington, D.C., and was the bishop of, I don't know, somewhere down in Texas. And when I made that proposal, I said, we're going to get pushback and resistance from a lot of different quarters. But we've got the engineers, we've got the talent, we know how to do this stuff. And when we launched the rebuilding of the hospital in Port-au-Prince, the 160-bed hospital, it's going to be done correctly so that it doesn't collapse. And sure enough, there was pushback. And the bishops in Haiti stamped their feet and complained and cried and all the other things. That hospital is finished. There's dozens, if not more, I haven't kept track of it, of schools and churches and social centers all built because of a collaboration between Haitian engineers, a lot of them living in Florida, and CRS. That's the new normal. On the engineering side, on the public health side, on the clinical medicine side, that's the professionalism that we're supposed to bring to the table.